Hey, it's Kevin DeWitt here. Welcome to another plugin knowledge session. This week we are continuing on our journey with iZotope Neutron, and we are looking at the last actual module within the plugin itself, and it is the transient section. So this section here obviously works on transients, or the initial peaks or hits of an instrument, that sort of thing. So it's, say, like a snare, that very initial chink, that where the snare gets hit, it's the very peak of the waveform, and that can be any instrument. It doesn't have to be a snare, but obviously transients can be a big component of drums because they are such very short, snappy hits, as opposed to, say, vocals and things like that. But transient plugins can work on those as well. So if you've ever used any of those, this is not much different other than iZotope's version of it, and it may have a few more little features with it that make it more powerful than others. But we'll have a look to see how that goes. And let's get stuck into it now. Okay, so here we have the interface here. Just like everything else, we have the section here that we can move around to wherever we like in the chain. We have our on off button. We have presets for each module, and we have a blend control that we can blend some in. We have our usual reset, question mark here for help, and our learn function when we go into multiband. So again, like pretty much every other section in Neutron here, this transient shaper can be either a single band or it can be multiple bands, up to 3 bands. So at the moment it is sitting here in single band, as you can see with this on section here that's on. If we wanted to add more bands, we just turn them on as such, and we can move our crossover frequencies here for what each band is affecting, what frequency range, and we can turn them back off. Same as we have for all the other modules. Again, we also have a bypass and a solo on each of these modules. Now, to just explain again, if you haven't watched any of the other ones, if you want a solo one, then you can listen to only that frequency range there to hear exactly what you're doing. And you can bypass it so that it actually does nothing for this section here, while the other two can still have an impact. Why you would use bypass instead of just turning it off is for this simple reason. Within bypass, this section here still is holding that frequency range locked in this band, even though it's not doing anything. It's bypassed, which means that this band here is sitting here between this point and this point. If I was to turn this off, suddenly this band here stretches all the way down to the low end, which means we're not bypassing this section anymore, and it will be affected with this whole frequency range here. So that is why we can use bypass instead of turning it off, so that we just lock that frequency range away to be not affected by this plugin whatsoever. So as you can see on the little bands here, each one of these are identical. We have an attack setting, we have a sustain setting, and we have an envelope response setting, or a shape of the curve. Okay, we've got 3 settings up the top here: precise, balanced, and loose. Defaults to balanced, which is basically, it's indicating it's the middle ground between each of these settings here. So it's balanced, it's in the middle. And it has a fairly quick attack and a medium release. The precise setting is a very fast recovery time between the transients, so it's supposed to give you the most accurate and responsive when adding or removing attack to a signal. And the loose control is slowest of all, and it's very slow for recovering from transients. And this mode here, it suggests is best for adding large amounts of sustain. So we'll try each of those out to get a better idea of what that is. Again, the learn button here only comes into play when we enable multiband. So we will do that through the song to see, or through the tracks to see what it suggests the crossover frequency points should be. So the attack component here is really our transient section here, right? This is the initial hit of the instrument. It's the peak. Okay, so that very first crack of that snare is affected by the attack here. If we go into a positive value, we are enhancing the transient. We're building that peak up so that we're making the drum stand out even more on that initial crack. And if we go into a negative, we're actually decreasing that. So we're containing it, we're reducing that very first transient sound and basically reducing that crack of the snare, probably making it sound a bit duller and having a bit less impact. So the sustain is basically, as it says, it's more the follow on of the note as opposed to the very first transient on it. So if we go into a positive, it increases that sustain, lets the note or the drum sound hang on a bit longer and sound a bit fuller and a bit more sustaining. I can't find another word to explain it. If we go into a negative, we start to bring the sustain down, so we're actually making it shorter, and we'll start to sort of tighten it up and make it sound like chopping it off almost. So then we obviously have these shapes, and it's defaulting to sharp, and sharp is the fastest and tightest release time and works best on short and staccato materials such as drums. Okay, that's straight out of the manual there. And the medium offers a transparent and linear release envelope. This mode tends to work well on the majority of material. And the smooth setting here is the slowest, and it's supposed to give us the smoothest sort of sound in regards to the shaping that we're doing. So we'll obviously compare all of these as well, just to give you an idea. So that's pretty much all the controls. So how about we get straight into it and have a listen, and we'll see what impact we get. So let's start off with one single band first, just to get a feel for the controls. And we've just got a drum track. So you'll see by this line, we're not doing anything at the moment. You can see the impact it's having on the initial hits. So I love this waveform that iZotope put on these. It's very helpful. It really shows you what it's doing real time, which is fantastic. Not many plugins do that. So that's a boost of an attack. Well, let's have a look at these settings here with that. Not a real obvious difference that I can hear in that. I'm sure it's doing something, but it doesn't even visually look like it. But maybe we'll check that out. Might have more impact on the sustain or something like that. So let's have a look at these settings up the top here and see what the difference is with those. Definitely hearing the precise setting being a bit tighter. And as we go balance to loose, we start to sort of, well, I guess we loosen up and you can hear it's not as tight, trails out a bit more and continues on. Okay, so let's go into the negative value. So we'll start off at 0, or roughly. So you can see how flat those notes are becoming there. We've taken all of the power out of the start of the note. So if you really want to have that sort of kick sound in there, but not have it so snappy, and dull it down a bit, blend it in a bit more, you know, in a certain section in your song or something like that, then you can obviously do this to do that, to get rid of that very snap at the start. All right, let's check out the sustain now. So it's definitely doing what it states. In this case here, because of the drums, it's almost like it's sounding like it's bringing out the room sound that these were recorded in. So it's really bringing up all that trailing edge there, which is generally the room and all the noises around the drum, as opposed to the original crack of the drum. And it's also bringing out a lower, the thumpy end of the kick as well. And if we go negative, you can hear how it's chopping it off. It's tightening it up a lot and really chopping that off. So they can be very useful if you've got a very, very roomy sounding drum kit and you want to tighten it up a little bit. You probably wouldn't go to the extremes I did there, but you might bring that down a little bit just to tighten that up and get rid of a little bit of that room sound, especially if it's not a great room sound that's going on. Let's see what these controls do with the sustain. Okay, definitely a massive difference when it comes to the sustain for these three items here. So we can see there's a big difference. Even in the waveforms here, we can see a lot of difference. And let's try these ones up the top. Pretty much the same as with the attack there, you know, it's as described. With the precise, it's very tight, very controlled. As you move from balance to loose, it loosens up and starts to let things get a little bit out of control. Let's fire up some multiband transient shaper now, and we're just going to play this and I'll get it to do a learn to see where it suggests our crossover frequency should be. Okay, so it likes 167 Hertz and 5.09K. So let's have a listen to each individually. So let's just solo. So you can see what you're getting out of that. So this is the very low end here. So you might say, let's add a bit of sustain to that because I want a real boom. Okay, let's check out the mid. There's a fair bit of crack there. So let's add some attack. And what do we get in the highs? That's mainly a hi-hat there, so what if we reduce that to get rid of a little bit of that shit sound? And even reduce some sustain. But that might dull it out a bit. We'll see. So let's bypass each and we'll just see what we get when we bring these in. A big boom going on there. So I might leave that one bypassed there, but definitely I like the boom sound that comes in on this kick. So if you ever get a kick drum and you just wish it had a little bit more low end thump, but you don't want the extra bits there, so, you know, even just mute that there, bypass that section, then this plugin can do wonders for you. You know, obviously you could EQ your kick, but if you're finding that's not working for you, then how about this? This is another great way of doing it. So transient shaper in multiband mode, just pick your low end here, do a bit of a boost on the sustain, bypass the rest, and you go from this to that. Sounds good to me. I like that one. All right, let's move this over quickly to just another instrument, just to do another example instead of just focusing only on drums. And obviously drums is going to be its major impact there and its best approach, but let's find another instrument that's quite snappy and stabby. That's a nice stabby guitar, so let's see what we can do with that. So we'll just get our transient, let's bring it over here. Okay, again, we'll just leave it in single for the moment, and I'll just play around, all right? I'm not going to go through explaining it all. Just have a bit of a play, see what we can do with it. So you can hear with just the top end here with this bit of attack and sustain, we go from a sort of a duller guitar and then we get a real bright, crisp sound when I bring that in. Now again, you might want to thicken the guitar up and you might decide that you want to add a bit of sustain to the low end there to thicken it up because it's a bit brittle or something like that. And you can also obviously take some of the top end off if you think it's, again, more brittle. So now we've got a thicker, duller guitar. Now, I'm not saying that's what you should do with this guitar because, to be honest with you, this guitar really needs to be sort of stabby and high-pitched. But it gives you an example of what you can do with this. If you're just not getting the right sound out of your instrument and the way it was recorded is just not working with the song, it's too brittle, too thin, then this tool can be used to do that instead of applying EQ. Okay, so that's the transient shaper section of iZotope Neutron. So as you can see, it's a very powerful tool. The whole toolkit within iZotope Neutron is extremely powerful. There's really not much you can't do with this plugin. And it is, yeah, it's a really good plugin. And it's extremely, extremely powerful and can be very complicated to learn too, but if you take each little module one at a time, each of the little components, then you can get fantastic results out of this. So check it out if you can get your hands on it, demo it, whatever else, try it on your mix, have a bit of a play with it, see what you get, leave some comments below, ask some questions. Hopefully it's been helpful. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.